Hello, and we are live. Welcome to the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. And I know I say it at every episode, but we have a really amazing guy and guest for you today. Not only is he working with hospitality people from all over the world, he worked with somebody called Auden Hospitality. So if you guys want to know a little bit more, you need to hang in it. Hello again. My name is Christian Fischer. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show, and I'm really excited about this conversation today. I met Scott at a conversation about a month ago, and just the way he talks about hospitality, what he does within the hotel industry, around Europe, the Americas, and the Middle East is just amazing. He worked with some of the best brands in the world, had partnership with Auden Hospitality, worked as a chief operating officer for a global investment firm. If there's a guy who did it all, it's Scott. So with that, I want to say welcome, Scot Turner, to our show.
Hey guys, how are you? Really appreciate it, Christian. Great to have it on, and I've loved our conversations. We've had a couple now, haven't we, in the last month? So I'm excited for this one as well. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. So as I said, we met a few weeks ago, and so now I don't think there has been a day where his name didn't come up in some shape or form, almost on a daily basis. And I honestly believe you meet people for a reason. And if you meet people, I think you need to share what they're up to. You need to find a way to partner with them, or you need to sit and say, who can I introduce them to? And with Scott, I've been doing all three of them for the last few days. So Scott, tell our listeners a little bit how you came to be the amazing hotelier and consultant and all the other great things you do for the industry. Give everybody the 5-minute cliff note on how you started in the industry.
Okay, so listen, I very much like you, Christian. I've been in this industry since I was 16, and it was the first thing I did when my mum and dad told me I had to go out and my money and pocket money was stopped. So I was a silver service waiter. I worked in. I'm from Leeds in the north of England. I worked in a city centre hotel. It had 500 people ballroom, big conference and banqueting that went with it, and I was a silver service waiter. And do you know what? From the minute I picked up that spoon and fork to start serving people, I just had this bug for the industry that's never gone out since. And I just loved it. I loved the adrenaline. I loved the fact that there was people shouting and there was things going on, and we were doing turnarounds, lates, earlies, bars, everything. And you can imagine 16 years old seeing all this kind of wealth, this opulence, this party, and all the rest of it. It was just a real adrenaline rush for me. So I did that part-time 2 years until left school here in the UK, and then I was kind of sat there going, okay, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I really actually quite like this hotel thing. Let's go do university. So I did hotel management at university. While I was there, I did a placement year at the Marriott in Grosvenor Square in London. At the time, I think it was 2000, something like that. It was owned by Marriott International, so it wasn't a franchise. So it was a great way to see how great hotels run. And I still remember now the GM, Hunter Hansen. He won't have a clue who I am, but I still remember him. And the reason I remember him is because every single day, and this is a hotel GM in a London 5-star London hotel, he used to walk around the floor every single day at 9 a.m. and at 3 p.m. and he would shake everybody's hand and ask them how they were.
That's amazing.
From an employee perspective, and it's always stayed with me since. And now whenever I go places, it's the first thing I do when I go in. I walk around and say hello to people and shake people's hands and ask them how they are, because that feeling has stuck with me now. 25 years of being in the industry. So got my degree. I can honestly say I've never used any of it, but it looks nice on paper. And in the olden days, you'll remember you used to have to have a degree to get anything remotely management in hotels. And I went to go work for a local hotel group here called De Vere Hotels. They had golf resorts, 5-star hotels, and I always worked in luxury hotels through my career. So I opened 4 hotels, 2 different countries, worked for the Dorchester Collection. While I was at the Dorchester Collection, we got a Michelin star in the restaurant. It was the first time I got exposure to celebrity, famous, well-known chefs, because in the same group there was Alan Ducasse, which was the first time I met the Ducasse team. Wolfgang Puck was at Bel Air at the time as well. And then he went to open in London. So it was a great exposure into everything that was kind of luxury and celebrity chef in terms of the industry. Left the Dorchester Collection to go and open the Intercontinental in London, which was the first time Intercontinental had opened a property for 36 years in London. So it was a major milestone. Did that for 3 years, and then I was hotel manager and got to a level where I was kind of like, okay, what do I do as my next move? My next move was called GM. And I was kind of looking at it. I wasn't really that keen on being a hotel GM, and I went kind of soul searching into what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was F&B, and it was restaurants. So I was speaking to a mentor at the time, and I was kind of like, I'm at this crossroads. I've been in hotels. Restaurants don't think we're very cool. So how am I going to get into restaurant life? And he said, I'll offer you a job. Okay, brilliant. Director. I said that I was an F&B director. I was a hotel manager at the time, but I'd been F&B director. I was okay. I can do ops director. That's not difficult. So we had a few beers to celebrate, and went home. Told my wife, I said, I've got a new job. It's in restaurants. It's everything I want. And she was like, "That's amazing, but as they bring you back down to earth a bit, especially when you've had a few shandies." She said, "Wait till the morning. Wait till you have the offer. Make sure the salary's good." And I was like, yeah, don't worry. So I went to bed, woke up with a raging hangover, looked at my emails, and it said, "You're going to be the ops director. This is the salary." And I was like, okay, wow, that's a good salary. And it went, and it's in Dubai. My wife said, "Did you agree to a job in Dubai?" I said, "Looks like it. Looks like I have, yeah." And that was it. That was history. We went to the Middle East. We lived in Dubai for 5 years. True story. Went to Dubai for 5 years and loved every minute of it. I had the experience there to work in 12 different countries. We opened 36, 37 restaurants during the 5 years. We were the brand representatives for Alan Ducasse out there. So we opened an amazing 3-story Alan Ducasse restaurant on the Palm in Dubai. We worked with China Grill management as well. So Asia de Cuba, China Grill from New York. Worked with some amazing local chefs as well. And we did everything from operations management to concept development. We ran a venue that was in the National Sports Stadium. So we used to do wide scale events for the football stadium, tennis stadium that was there as well. So it really was amazing. During my time there, the business was bought out by a Saudi investment company. And their model was they wanted to help grow and scale incubator brands. So incubator brands being brands that were maybe 1 or 2 locations that reached the capacity in terms of knowledge, expertise, or capital. They would go in, they'd invest in the business, and then we would then scale it out from there. So my role, I was VP operations. We'd go into these businesses before acquisition and kind of look at the operation, see if we could scale it, see if it could work across different operating platforms. And then we would go in afterwards and we would implement all our systems, procedures that would help them scale. And then we operated restaurants. So it was 85 restaurants, 16 brands across New York, London, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. By the end of my time there, I was COO. And again, I just got to that point in my career where I was in an investment office. I wasn't in the operation. I wasn't on the floor. I had brand GMs who were the ones who were doing all the exciting stuff like brand development and menu development and sales and marketing. And my job was to sit with them throughout and kind of keep them on track for a 5-year exit plan. And I just kind of sat there and I kind of felt like I'd stopped making an impact. So I sat with my wife again and I was like, do you know what? I think it's time I moved on and I need to be in a role that's closer to the operation. Didn't really know what I was going to do. Went for all the classic interviews again. And I was walking around a park in London, kind of trying to work out what was next, and just got this burning desire for the first time to do something of my own, and to build something of my own and to give it a go. And 2 years on, Auden Hospitality is my business. We've just, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. We've just gone through that process now of where we've gone from startup to next stage growth, a
Hmm.
couple of people on the payroll. And what do? I take the hotel education, the 15 years in hotels, and I apply the 9 years of restaurants to go back into hotels and really teach hoteliers how to think differently about running restaurants. Because what I found in the 9 years of working in independent restaurants was restaurateurs think a very different way to hoteliers. And if more hoteliers think like restaurateurs, I don't think we'd have the global problem now that is really poor F&B in the probably majority of hotels across the world. And listen, I was speaking to people a couple of weeks ago at a hotel investors conference, and F&B kept coming up. It's a global problem. There's a real issue, and we go in and we help them think differently and look at a way to kind of navigate through that and come out the other side with great F&B that the guests will love. So yeah, that's what we do. As part of that, part of the journey as I was setting up, I started writing on LinkedIn every single day. So I post on LinkedIn. I share all of my secrets. So I always say to people, I don't have a secret sauce because I share it on LinkedIn. What I don't share is how to apply it. And if you don't have the experience, you still need to speak to me. So it gives you a framework, but it doesn't give you the rest of it. So go on LinkedIn, talk every day. I've got a newsletter that goes out to F&B leaders, 57 countries, called F&B Insider, and then we have a podcast that you were on as well. Hospitality huddles, and
Hmm.
really we just get people on there who just have a different point of view that any hotelier or any F&B guy who's listening can kind of go, do you know what, that's a different way to think, and I think that'd work in my operation. So so that's the podcast that we have as well, and yeah, that's the story. That brings me up to 2024.
Now that's amazing, and I love to hear it because what you did in the hospitality industry on the hotel side, we did for the back of the house. And for me, that totally resonated the first time I met you because we want the same thing for the end of the day
Yep.
for the industry. And you have that front of the house side, and I always came from the back of the house side. And for me, I was so fascinated when you talk about, you're in 14 different countries. So how do you feel working in 14 different companies? 14 different countries? How did this influence your culinary? Not just culinary, but restaurateur kind of side from a professional journey perspective.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. I think do you know there's one thing that I think helps you find the little secrets of every city you visit, and that's food. And we'd always make sure that we'd get into the nooks and crannies and find out who the kind of the local heroes were from a food perspective. And
Hmm.
from doing that, you then get to see the most amazing places of every city. It's like I've been going to Paris for years, but there was one we went a couple of weeks ago and went to an ice cream shop, a Lebanese ice cream shop in this neighborhood. My wife thought I'd taken us to the ghetto, and we got there, and this ice cream shop was the most amazing ice cream you've tasted. And I just think it's got the power to unlock so many different learnings and experience. I went to Beirut, and we went up into the mountains in Beirut where all the wineries are.
Hmm.
And when we got up there, I always thought of Beirut as kind of this country that was, a little bit desert, a bit hot.
Hmm.
Got there, went into the hills, and the produce that comes out of that region is phenomenal. And when you then see that in some of the restaurants there, it was just exceptional. There's a couple of restaurants there. There's Baron, which is all done via the Josper. The food was incredible. There's another one which is classic Lebanese, but done in a real modern way, called Liza. And it's in this beautiful old building in Beirut that's been incredibly well restored. And the food was just exceptional. So I think that was one of the things that I took away from going to these different countries, was just the
Hmm.
ability to see different things, experience different foods, experience different cuisines. Back again in Beirut, there's an amazing little restaurant where you go for lunch every day, and what it is it's all the housewives from the hills come down into this one restaurant with some produce. They cook the menu of the day, and you go in there and you'll eat it, and it's like proper mama's food, and you just wouldn't get that experience outside. So it's all those type of things, and then just culture. I think Do you know what? I think one thing about moving countries for me, and I know you'll probably have experienced this, is when you go to a different country, you have no support system, you have no backup. You're on your own. You have to make your own decisions, and I just found that that brought an incredible strength out of me that I didn't realize I had.
Mhm.
Because a number of times it would have been really easy to give up, and I just got powered through it and got through it, and I think that taught me a real thing about resilience that, people talk about that word a lot, but I
Yeah.
don't think you truly know about it until you really put yourself out of your comfort zone by going somewhere you don't know.
When you say that, that reminds me of as I came to the States not speaking the language.
Mm.
I knew of a guy, didn't know anybody, and came to a place of New York City outside of Queens, which wasn't my favorite place to be. And they had something called mac and cheese. And I was like, how dare you, put cheese on macaroni or back home? This is culinary rape. You can't do
Yeah.
that.
Mm.
And they put ketchup on meat, perfectly good meat. They put sauce on it. And my dad said, just come home. I said, I can't. He says, why not? He says, all my friends gonna think I'm a loser. I told him I go to America, I can go home.
Yeah.
So I stuck it out. And it was hard. I
Mm.
think there's no way of learning a culture as quick as, when you don't speak the language and you rely on learning the language. And then the guy I worked for in the beginning said, okay, hey, Christian, have you ever heard of Manhattan? I said, yes. He says, okay, it's that direction. Here's the van. I want you to deliver something to the 34th Street. And here's 2 buckets full of quarters. This is the phone number. Call me when you get lost. I was like, that direction. I drive into Manhattan. I was like, I have no idea where the hell I am. I look for a phone. He says, okay, read the numbers. Oh, this is where I am. He says, okay, good, good. Go 3 streets, make a right. I go lost again. And then so I left 9:30 in the morning. I came back a little bit after 6. He's sitting outside smoking a cigar, laughing for me to pull up. He said, so how did it go? I was like, you fucking suck. It was terrible. He says, but he says, will you ever need directions in Manhattan again? No, because I've been from Bronx to Brooklyn 6 times, in a van. I got cursed in 15 different languages, was not cool. But he says, and then, he was laughing every time he says, there's nothing better than full in cold turkey. And it's so true. I
It is
knew
definitely true.
I knew every in and out. Oh my God. But I drove for a full day. I drove, 10 hours in Manhattan, up, down, up, down, until
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found her. And the
100%.
lady at the 34th Street laughed as I delivered. She says, yeah, he told me you got to be here somewhere in the afternoon. And it's just the funniest thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. Do you know, the first time I went to Saudi Arabia, it was 2017, and the taxi drivers couldn't speak a word of English. And I thought Google Translate was an app that you could use to get you where you wanted to go. And I was on the way back to the airport, and I was left it a bit late because it was the first time I'd been, and what have you. And showed the guy Terminal 2 on my Google Translate. Didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't even end up at the airport. And I was just like, okay, fine. And then having to try and get yourself, and like there's moments like that where you don't get those experiences elsewhere, do you? And you get to the airport and they're not particularly helpful because it's kind of a little bit on the culture, and you're sitting there being like, never again, never again. And then after a while you just embrace it. And I used to love like people used to come with me after, like people on the team, and they used to find it hilarious when I was in taxis with people. And I'll tell you how I used to get them to start speaking English, because I'm sure most of them used to pretend not. And this is a true story. My team used to laugh because the way I used to get them to speak was talk about cricket, and I know nothing about cricket. And because they'd sit there, and a lot of them were Pakistanis and Indians.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, do you speak English? And, they'd try and ignore you. You'd be like, do you like cricket? And all of a sudden they'd turn to you and the cricket. And I'd go, Ian Botham. And the Ian Botham. And it's how I used, and I'd go, right, now take me to the airport. you motherfucker, because I know you can speak English now. And no word of a lie. And there used to be like my team sat in the back of the cab, like, who is this? What's happened to him since he came to Saudi Arabia? But you don't get those experiences if you stay in your comfort zone. So yeah, it was loads of fun. The best one I ever did as well was we got sent to Davos to do the World Economic Forum, and we were doing a speakeasy bar for a hotel that was owned by Abu Dhabi Capital. So the brief was, we want to do a speakeasy bar in Davos for the World Economic Forum. A couple of things. We were taking a team to Davos, which was in -17, from Dubai, which was in 32 degrees. I know that's not metric, but it's a big swing between very hot and fucking cold. And so that was the first thing. So people just didn't get it. Trying to find boots, trying to find warm clothes in Dubai Mall, I can tell you from experience, is not an easy job to do. And when you do, it's really overpriced. And everyone looks at you crazy because they're like, we're 30 degrees outside and you want snow boots. Like, who are you and what are you doing here? You've come to the wrong place. Anyway, we went there and we made the mistake of going into this guy. It was the only bar that was half decent, and going, listen, we need to take over your bar for the World Economic Forum. We've got decent backing. So, you know what? What's your take-ins? We'll put 20% on top and give us your bar. This guy lied, told us it was way more than it was, and literally dropped the keys and ran. So we were left with this bar. And when we started doing it, we went to go put all the champagne and the vodka in the freezer and the fridge and what have you, and none of it worked. And I had this idea, and it was my idea, and I admit it, and it's gone on, one of those ones of biggest failures in my career. And I was like, don't worry, guys, we're in -17, we're in the snow, just put it outside. Like, your freezer breaks down, put it in the snow, it'll chill it until you forget about it, and you leave it all there, and the whole lot was frozen. And then we're trying to thaw expensive champagne for the time that the CEO of this company was coming, because we'd frozen the Dom Perignon and everything. And it was just like, I look back now and it's funny, but at the time you're running on nothing but adrenaline.
It's the best.
trying to make these things happen. And honestly, we're going to write a book, and I'm going to come on your course and write a book. And some of these stories will go in it.
We need to, because it reminds me. So, I worked for Nestle as I came to the US, and we had company housing, and I was in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. If you ever have the opportunity to go to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, don't. So, and at the time, we left the house in uniforms, and we came home in uniforms. And so every time we walked out, there was me and Jörg, a Swiss guy. So we walk out, and we hear somebody scream from across the street, Forster, Australian for beer. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? And then the conversation got, I told people I'm from Austria. People have no clue, where Austria is. And then in the end, it was just, there's not enough deodorant for this conversation. You know what? I'm from Australia. I gave up. But it kind of, it's amazing. But I think there's something really cool about this industry, because the experiences you have, I don't think there's any other industry out there like the food service industry, number one.
No.
And number two, food allows you to go and do anywhere, because food is everywhere. And so with our show, we call our show The Disruptive Chef, because we want chefs to think differently. And with your background, talk to me a little bit, about, you opened up multiple restaurants, all over the world, and you created some really unique dining experiences. How can now putting yourself in the shoe of a chef, or the things you've seen from a chef's perspective, how do you feel a chef can leverage that information and partner with somebody like you? Because in our industry, chefs still think they need to do it all on their own, which is not true. But there's somebody like you who had this really amazing experience and has opened, some amazing restaurants. How could they learn a tip or a trick or two from your experiences?
I'm a big believer in storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I think storytelling is huge.
Yep.
And do you know what? I've met a lot of chefs over the years that are fantastic cooks, but terrible storytellers. And that's where then you start seeing menus diluted, or things that just don't work, menus written by ego and things like that. And I think do you know what? If you got a chef who can create fabulous concepts because they can create amazing stories, then you've got one hell of a entrepreneur businessman there. And I think when you look at some of the best restaurants in the world, they have the story. And I think, now, I don't call it Instagrammable because I think you're just pigeonholing it. When I talk to my team, and when I work with chefs on my projects, I pick the chef for the project. I don't have a generic chef. I have a network of chefs that I go in and I get the right guy for the job. So I just think it's a much better way to run a business than having a generic chef who doesn't,
Agree.
who kind of needs to bring in skill at a lower level. So I always sit with the team and I go through menus and we talk about the product and we go, okay, what are the dishes that guests will want to capture, and what are the dishes that guests will want to tell others about? Because now I think emotion and experience has become a big part of the overall dining experience for a guest. And I think as a chef, they're the questions I'd be asking. And it doesn't need to be gimmicks. In fact, I hate gimmicks. I remember falling out with a sales and marketing manager. We opened this bakery and in London. It's called Chestnut Bakery. So if anyone, and I got my own way. So if people go and have a look at it, they'll see how amazing it is. But she said to me, she was like, what are we going to tell people? What's the PR company going to be able to share? What's the gimmick? What? And we make great fucking croissants. And she went, but the PR company isn't going to be able to sell a croissant. I said, they're going to be able to sell this croissant. Trust me. We're just going to do amazing croissants. We're going to do amazing breads. And this is going to be about quality. And we're going to build from the ground up. And we ended up falling out about it. I got my own way. We brought in another marketing manager. And the first thing she did when she started, I said to her, we can't use a PR company. She said, why? I said, if we were a local neighborhood bakery, we wouldn't be using a PR company because we wouldn't be able to afford one. So we'd have to use our product to get out to the mass and tell people who we are. And then when we've done that, maybe a PR company might come to us and go, actually, we know we can sell you and we can work with the product you've got. So back to chefs, I think, tell stories and really look at the stories and how that can then create moments that guests would want to tell others about and capture. And, we're working on a restaurant right now, actually. I've been doing the concept document today, funnily enough. And it's based in the New Forest in England, and it's a beautiful part of England that's all countryside. And this hotel looks out amongst a deer farm. So you sat in the restaurant, you're looking at deer running around and stuff like that. And they've got this beautiful garden at the back, and we're looking at calling it the pantry. And we're going to grow things in the garden. And then what we've called it is we're going to preserve the seasons.
I love that.
And we're going to ferment. We're going to do picklings. We're going to do preserves, and then we're going to put them all over the restaurant like it was a pantry at home. So we've got like spice racks for the dried herbs. We've got jars. We're going to have a old-fashioned Burkle slicer with scales, where we're going to have local cured meats in the fridge, and guests can get it by the slice and build their own meat board. So it doesn't always have to be about Instagrammable, about all these kind of ice creams with candy floss coming off it and chocolate bombs and things like that. Because I think people are looking for authenticity. They're looking to buy into the story. And if your story is, we're going to bring the best of local and we're going to preserve it so that any time of year, you're going to be able to taste how great the carrots are that are grown in this part of the world. That to me is a story, and it invokes emotions. And it gets people to go and tell others about what that is. And then you can make it look super sexy. You can bring the whole food element into the restaurant, and you can give it this real old kind of foodie feel. So, I think it's look at how you can evoke stories would be my big tip.
I absolutely love everything you said. And it's so true. And with chefs, a lot of them feel, there's Gordon Ramsay. I need to be like Gordon Ramsay. I need to do this. Just do you. And
100%.
For us, as we open our first restaurant here in Connecticut, we came to, we coming from Europe. We do, just amazing European food. And we were in the same boat. Nobody came for two reasons. Number one, because we thought we're so good, we only need cash. We don't need a credit card. And then, 3 weeks into crickets. We go across the street. There was a Frenchman who had a restaurant, and he says, "Your mistake is," he says, "you do what you want to do. You're not in New York City. Here, you need to do what the customers do want." And he says the first thing they want is credit card. I was like, "Oh man." And then we started researching New England because we were in New England, and then we call it New England. We take New England recipes and Europeanize it because just by Europeanizing, I was able to get $3 more a dish, and it was crazy. We did just good old fashioned Austrian, German, European food, and we brought this flair in. And if the Frenchman wouldn't be honest with me from across the street, we would have never made it. And so because I thought, oh, look, we do all of this. We kind of just blow them away with what we do. And that was totally not what the consumer wanted. So totally true. People vote with their feet. And his Saturdays were full and we had nobody. And so for us, it was a big learning curve. So around, doing what you do. So, can you tell us a little bit more what you're currently focusing on? And by the way, you shared a video in one of the social media sites where you were walking around and there was this beautiful building behind it. Is that the new restaurant you want to make?
Yeah. That's the new one. Yeah.
It was absolutely gorgeous. I first thought it looked like your house.
I wish.
I want to be like Scott. So talk to me a little bit about more what you're focusing on, where you think disruption in the hospitality sector is around, programming and concepts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I said when we were touching on my story that I love getting involved in the operation. I love being there and being in the nooks and crannies. And, I love talking with chefs. I love talking with front of house people. I just love being in down and dirty. And honestly, if restaurant managers paid the salary that I need to keep my kids fed and watered, clothed, and my wife happy, I'd be a restaurant manager. I would, because I just love it. So when I set up my own business, I always vowed I wasn't going to be the typical consultant that goes in, tells you everything that's wrong with your business, that 9 times out of 10 you already know, so it just pisses you off, and then give you a nice action plan or manual and give it back to you and go, there you go, good luck. Because first of all, those type of people I never used to like when I was in operations. In fact, I used to hate them. And second of all, the reason they're in that place in the first place is because they don't know how to get themselves out of it. So what makes you think they can implement successfully as well? So I go into businesses and I speak, and my business is primarily in hotels, and it's doing F&B in hotels, but I run 2 restaurants in London. Why do I run 2 restaurants in London? Because I want to tell people I'm an operator. I want to tell people I know what their problems are. So when a hotelier is sitting opposite me and says my utility bills have gone up or the food cost is rising, I know, because I'm dealing with it myself in restaurants in the middle of London, which is one of the hardest places to have a successful restaurant in the world. So I operate and I understand. But what I really love is I love being creative. I love telling stories and I love making a difference in businesses. So we go into hotel operations that they have an F&B department that's maybe not hitting the potential. Maybe it's just not been loved for a while. And first of all, we start by creating a strategy. We do it 3 ways, and this was the video that I shared, and it's really simple. We listen. So we go into the business, we speak to the stakeholders, we speak to the team, we speak to the guests, we speak to the owners, and we listen to what everyone has to say. Genuinely, I reckon 9 times out of 10 we go in businesses, they're all saying the same thing. So it's really easy to then bring that together. But we get down and we don't just speak to the managers, we speak to the team, we speak to the waiters, we speak to the chefs, we speak to the KPs, we find out what's going on. Then we observe. So we go around all the outlets, we sit in them, we watch what's going on, we see what is happening in reality. We listen to what guests are saying on tables next to us, and we go to the competition and we understand what the competition's doing as well. And then finally we analyze. So we get all the data in from the hotel, and I've got a supply chain director, I've got an operations director, and they get this data and they sift through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they look for as many opportunities as they can from the data. And then we put that together with the stuff that we've listened to and the stuff that we've observed. And 9 times out of 10, there's a correlation between them all. And that creates the action plan. So it's very factual, but we're taking into account stakeholders. We look at what the roadblocks are. We look at the bits that are pissing the team off, and therefore making life difficult. And we look at the bits that's frustrating the guests as well. So we do that, and we create a strategy. So we create a document. It's not an action plan. It's a document that says, this is what we've observed. This is what we listen to. This is what the data tells us, and this is what we recommend to take
Mhm.
forwards. So we do that. And as one of these today with the restaurant, we're saying, do you know what? You've got the basis. You don't need to spend a penny on design apart from 2 rugs because the floors are too hard and you can hear your food coming from the other side of the dining room. So you need two rugs and a Burkle slicer, and it's all about the story, and we have to bring the restaurant to life. So it's not about going in and ripping up the rule book and starting again, and it's big investment. Sometimes maybe it is. Sometimes maybe an owner says, I want to spend money.
Yep.
But a lot of the time it's just going, you have the basis there, let's ignite it. And then the most important bit for me is we then work with the hotel group or the hotels afterwards, and we help them implement that strategy into the business. And we do the big wins first. We invest in the team, and we don't bring in people that are going to come. So we don't bring in a chef and go, Mr. Chef, write the menu for them and let them deliver it.
Mhm.
We say, you guys do the menu, and we're going to come in and we're going to make it go from good to great.
Yep.
Because one of the things that I used to watch Dominic Ansel do, Alan Ducasse do, Frederic Vardon used to do, their teams used to create the dishes, and then the chefs used to come and taste,
And
and they used
finally,
to
yep.
and they used to take it from 80% to 120,
Mhm.
and that was the difference.
Love that.
So I wanted to adopt that same approach. So we don't bring chefs in to write menus. We bring in chefs to coach, mentor, and train the
Yeah.
current team that's there, get them super involved, get them bought into it. The other reason we do that is because when we leave, because we will leave, those chefs needs to be able to continue that restaurant,
Mhm.
be engrossed in the story, have total brainwash on what the mission is. And in 3 years' time, we want to go back there as a guest, and it looks exactly the same, and it's doing super successful. So that's the other reason we coach and we don't do. Um, and then we help them implement, and then we go to a place where they're kind of doing what they need to do. They're in a rhythm, and we go back as brand guardians after that. So we help them when they're changing menus. Maybe they want to do a promotion, and we go yes, no, maybe, and it's very much a, you send us a menu, we'll have a look, we'll go, it's bang on, it's maybe needs a tweak here, and we send it back. So that's kind of the main model of how we work with people. And then other ones, what are we doing? We're working on a document right now for a hotel group in Asia, and we're creating a commercial F&B toolkit, and
Mhm.
that means what's the best practice about how you run your restaurant from a commercial perspective. So thinking everything from positioning to omni-channel approaches to strategy to tactical activations, everything that you would need to do from a commercial perspective to roll it out as a brand standard of this is the best practice, this is how you do it. So we're creating the toolkit, which is a manual that says how to do it, and then we're doing like short video content that supports it from a training perspective so that it's nice and visual as well. So yeah, the main one is the first one, which we love getting involved in, but yeah, we do some more kind of strategic tactical manual sides as well.
I love that. And there's a whole new side about you, which I absolutely admire. In 2011, I started a nonprofit called the Culinary Leadership Academy. And the idea of it was that we help chefs with self-leadership skills, because we've seen so many chefs struggle out there from a mental perspective, not knowing where to go. And as an industry, chefs don't like to ask for help.
Mm.
So we created that organization to support the industry. But there's something you involved in. It's called the Burn Chef Project, which is a project based out of the UK. And I love what they are all about. They also created 4 out of 5 chefs in their hospitality career, in one point or another, struggled with mental health issues. Talk to us a little bit how you got involved and how you see that project evolving.
Yeah, I'm incredibly passionate about the industry,
Mm.
and I think that the pandemic really stopped covering up the cracks in terms of how we look after
Sure.
people.
Mhm.
And I always say to people, when people talk to me about the pandemic, I always said, you know what, from an operations perspective, after the first couple of weeks of getting our head around we were going to be in the shit, it was actually like opening restaurants, closing restaurants. Closing restaurants is a bit more difficult. It's a bit more sad, but opening, closing restaurants is what we do throughout our career and what have you. So it's not alien. The bit that was the most difficult for me was the well-being of the teams that were sat at home because they were furloughed, they weren't allowed to leave their
Mhm.
houses. I was I I always say I was incredibly lucky in COVID because my life didn't change. If anything, it got better because there were seats on the tube and there was no traffic in London, so it was much easier to get around. And there's an amazing video. I'll have to share it. There's an amazing video of me and my ops manager at the time on, the Boris bikes, the
Yeah, yeah.
electric bikes, going the wrong way up round Trafalgar Square because there was literally no one on the road, and we were taking products from one shop to another. Like, we had the time of our lives during COVID. But what was hard is we did our 8-12 hours in the restaurants, and we consolidated restaurants, and we were low man. But then we had people who were living on their own in a
Mhm.
different country to home. People who had been furloughed because business had dropped like it had for everyone,
Yeah.
and we had to think about them as much, and that was incredibly hard and incredibly emotional. And when I came out of that, and I started setting up my own business, and I had a bit of time on my hands while I had no business basically. I was like, what can I do with this to kind of make a difference to the industry that's given me so much throughout my career? And I met Chris, the founder,
Mhm.
and we've become such good friends, and I just loved the mission and thought, you know what, this is my chance to really help make the industry a better place. So I became an ambassador. I'm now chief ambassador of the Burnt Chef project, and I support everything that they're doing to be make the industry a better place. And it's some of the stuff that the guys are working on is incredible. I was on a call actually with Chris today, and he was telling me about two initiatives which I can't share right now. But honestly, when they get released, they're going to be game changers for the industry in terms of how we can, one, help signpost people to better place, and the other one is how we can get much more data on it. And to put it in perspective, I always share this, and I'm rambling on, but so stop
Yeah.
me if not. But as an industry, we teach our people how to do physical first aid. And every HR director in every company in this global world that we live in will have a quota of going, I need to have X amount of people who are trained on physical first aid. The likelihood of someone getting seriously injured in work is very, very slim
Mhm.
from a hospitality, but okay, chopping the finger off or
Yeah.
something like that, right? What is more common is for managers to have to deal with a team member that has either issues with mental ill health or anxiety or any of the symptoms that's there, or maybe has a learning difficulty that impacts the way that they can be treated at work. Yet we don't treat people how to deal with mental health. And I did the mental health first aid training. I think that it should be mandated by governments around the world that people should have to put much effort into mental health training as they do into physical first aid. Because I'm telling you, I've seen a scientific research by the Burnt Chef Project. It was of a restaurant group in London, and really well run, great restaurant group. But they did a scientific questionnaire, and what came out of that was that the middle management were the most likely to suffer from burnout. But when they looked at the training going on in that restaurant group around mental ill health, well-being, and etc., it was being done to the team members. So the logic behind it was, we're going to go to the mass and we're going to teach all the team members how to deal with it. But actually, what
Mhm.
they should have done to be more effective was focus on that middle management. So your store GMs, your restaurant managers, your head chefs, because they're the ones who are most likely to face burnout. And I just think that's incredibly uh, sad that the people who would have to deal with mental ill health situations are actually the people who are most at risk. And we have to do more to educate people about why we should be doing it.
I absolutely love that, and I so agree with that because being in the industry as long as I have, I seen that, chefs at the end of the night, you know what? They drink 2 bottles of scotch
Mm,
because they think that's how you, kind of
mm,
relax. Or, they drink to do some other stupid things.
mm,
And in our industry, alcohol, sex, and drugs are very
mm,
available. So it's not an healthy industry. And our approach for that always was, if I can get a chef to not participate in that, how is he? And for me, this starts with self leadership, and that I have a network I can rely on, or somebody who can hold me to account, and that I need the leadership skills within myself to do that. Because how can I expect my team to do it if I can do it for myself?
yeah.
And I always looked at the people I was responsible for in the kitchen, like my kids. They don't care what you say; they watch what you do.
Yes.
And so it starts with the chef, and it starts from the top down. Because if I say don't do, but I do, they will
Mm,
do the same thing. So I always said it needs to be in that. And we give free leadership lessons away. We do coaching with them for absolutely for free. We have a mastermind we host for free because we want to make sure we help chefs. So I'm very, um, aligned on and very familiar with
mm,
the Burn Chef project does. I just think we need to do more of it. And I agree with what you said. It needs to become part of the culinary schools. And it also goes back. There was a new study which just came out 2 days ago that 8 out of 10 restaurants failed because they were started by chefs, not because they didn't have great food. They were never taught the HR piece, the
mm.
business piece, the front of the house piece, the construction piece, and everything else which goes with it. And I think there needs to be a culinary school which kind of brings it all full together.
Yeah. Do you
And
know it's I did my mental health first aid with 3 college lecturers because the Burnt Chef project gives free training to college lecturers.
mhm,
And they were saying that they spend more time now dealing with mental ill health issues and a
mhm,
lot of self-harm than they do actually teaching. So I think what we've got to realize is we're already an industry that doesn't necessarily look after people. We put people under
sure,
stress and the job is stressful. And now the world is making people more anxious and worry about themselves. You put those two together,
mhm,
that's a chemistry for explosion.
I
And
absolutely love it. Yeah,
we've
it's
got to
very true.
accept that is one of the things. And back onto schools, you're absolutely and some of the great chefs I've worked with, you know, I agree with that. I agree with that. Fantastic chefs, terrible businessmen, and and they do that with other people's money a lot of the time.
Mhm,
And a funny story. I was ranting to my wife the other day because my kids have gone back to my kids are 4 and 6. They've gone back to school this week, and we've brought out this ridiculous thing in the UK now that some guy came out and said that that our kids don't spend enough time in school.
mhm,
Okay, their answer to that is that they've made them all stay in school for an extra 5 minutes a day, and the calculation was over the course of their school journey, they'll have picked up the extra skills that's going to send them off into the world and make them better people. Right, 5 minutes a day. I have a real issue with why a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old should spend 5 minutes extra in school. But my answer back to that would be, and I'm going to get on a political rant, is okay, but what are you going to do with that 5 minutes that's different to
mhm,
what you're doing now? Because we're not giving people the skills now to go out into the world and do what he wants to do. I have a nephew. He's 14. He was choosing to do like his exams, his subjects for his exams, and he really wanted to do business, but he wants to be an architect.
mhm,
He couldn't pick um, design and business for the same things, but he's doing other subjects like biology, chemistry, religious education, which might not necessarily be the things that's going to help him in his chosen job of being an architect. So
yep,
instead of teaching him the skills that he wants to learn and he needs to learn, he's picking up these other things. And I think back to chefs. I think if we can make businessmen and entrepreneurs out of these guys, we have some serious talent on our hands. And I
I
think
couldn't agree with you more.
you know
And
that
And that's exactly why we started the Disruptive Chef, because I
mm,
honestly feel chefs have so many transferable skills,
yeah.
but there's also opportunities, and they need to take a really hard look in an inventory.
Mm,
What are some of the things I need to learn? And you don't
yeah.
need to do on your own. you can partner with somebody who can do that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree with you more, because for me,
Mm.
when I see chefs spending their whole life work and starting a restaurant and not succeeding, it hurts.
Mm.
And sometimes it's one conversation, one connection away from making this successful. And for me, that's where the conversation start.
Yeah.
Therefore, what we have here, because we're creating
Mm.
conversation, and we create by being honest and being vulnerable. And there has been nobody more vulnerable than you in sharing your story and what you did for us today. And I can talk to you forever, but we have two things before we wrap this conversation up. First off, to our listeners, if you haven't done so, please join the Disruptive Chef Club, which is our private community where we give you a front row seat of all the great things we do. We're also going to share ahead of time who we have as special guests, which allows you to kind of give some feedback. What do you want to know about them, and what do you want to learn about them? So, and that's also the group. You get the front row seat if you try something new. You get it at a discounted rate or for free, because we want to get your input, your insights, and your knowledge to make our programs better and provide a better value to the hospitality industry. So with that, if you look what you have going on, let us look a little bit behind the curtains. What are some of the new things you're working on? You're not really 100% sure if you can share with us, but what are some of the cool new things you're working on?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm actively working at the minute at looking at how I can get onto the speaking circuit. Just because I think there's a lot of people who need to hear what I have to say. I talk on LinkedIn, but I just think it could be incredibly rewarding to stand in front of people and talk about what I love and what I see every day. And do you know when you're in a closed environment, whether you're a chef in a kitchen in one location or whether you're doing hotels, you're very blinkered, you're tunnel vision. And sometimes listening to people who are doing things around the world with lots of people, that just one thing can maybe make a difference to what you do. So
Totally agree.
I'm working on that. I'm working with obviously Monty quite a bit on that one as well. I promised when we spoke last time that I was going to join your next cohort and
Correct.
write a book.
Yeah,
And
I was waiting for that.
yeah, and it's going to be my unreasonable hospitality for my clients, and I'm going to write it with the view that I'm going to get all the chefs that I've worked with over the last 2 years to contribute a recipe to the book, and in between the recipe to the book, I'm going to write how I help people think differently. So the bit about the strategy will be in there and stuff like that, but it's going to be like one of those that you can take home and you can keep it in your recipe drawer, and there'll be some cool stuff on there. I work with amazing brand Homies on Donkeys who do Mexican taqueria. We've got some guys from Amsterdam. We've got some amazing kind of local stuff from there. We've got some really cool British stuff, and we're going to bring some of the preservings and picklings into it as well. So that'll be really cool. And yeah, I think, well, that's probably enough for now, but there's always things on the list. And I would say this to anyone is always have a list of like blue sky thinking, and don't rule them out until you've looked into it a bit more and seen if there's opportunity, and then you never know what might come from it. So
Couldn't agree, because as we said earlier, for chefs, it's also for us. We one connection, one new idea away from have a total different life. So
100%.
before we wrap it up and before we do that, so to our listeners, 100% transparently, Scott doesn't know that, but we have rapid fire questions for him, 3, which we're going to use to wrap up. But before we do this, Scott, what does disrupting an industry mean to you?
Disrupting an industry. I think disrupting an industry to me means you lead, you don't follow.
Hmm.
And I think you always look at how you can stand out from the crowd and how you can get attention.
Awesome. If you wouldn't be a restaurateur, what would you be?
I would work in an airport. I'd work in an airport because I love planes. I love traveling on
Oh, yeah.
planes, and I think the adrenaline of work. My perception of the adrenaline working in an airport would be exactly like working in a restaurant. So I always said if it wasn't restaurants, it'd be airports.
I love that. So before we do the rapid fire question, how can people follow you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, best place is LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. I'm pretty active. So yeah, check me out on LinkedIn. We've got the Hospitality Huddles podcast as well. But I'm on all the platforms. I've recently gone on and growing. So, but yeah, LinkedIn's the place.
That's awesome. So make sure you guys follow him on LinkedIn and check out the Burn Chef Project. It's an amazing organization, and see if you can partner or help them. So with that, our rapid fire question. Question number one is, if you were given the power to ban a ingredient forever, what would it be and why?
It would be parsley. It'd be parsley. I don't know. I just don't understand it. Listen, I like to think I've got a fairly good palate. I don't see what it brings, and I think it looks crap on top of dishes.
I just want to point out, there's a whole culture very upset with you right now.
Yes.
Parsley means the world to them. So,
yeah, exactly.
question number two. What is a dish, if given the power, you would ban forever because it needs to stop? What is that and why?
That's a brilliant question. I think it would be the chicken tikka masala, because there is nothing authentic about chicken tikka masala. And anyone who kind of really knows Indian culture would know that. So yeah, this is one for all my Indian friends out there. Let's get rid of it.
We have a company we work with. They make tikka masala sauce. They're number one seller. So you just made another whole group. I think you just voted yourself off the island. There's just another whole group which is very upset with you.
Yeah.
And maybe especially the ones which put parsley on top of the tikka masala.
And yeah. Instead of coriander, to get it mistaken because they don't know what it is and what it's used for. That's why. So I'm really sorry. I've pissed off all those retro people who still think they're in the 80s, and I've annoyed the company you work for with the chicken tikka masala. I won't be on again.
Yeah, the rim of plates had the parsley on it.
Exactly.
You couldn't eat it because it was always. Now we're dating ourselves. So the last question is, what do you believe in your belief is a kitchen gadget which is way overrated?
Which kitchen gadget? The KDS. The kitchen display screen. Overrated. Whatever. I don't understand why people think they don't need to. A good check and a Sharpie isn't good anymore. I've tried to use them. I ran a quick service restaurant in the UK. We ran 4 restaurants. They were doing like 40, 50,000 a week. We ran them on KDS. They were a fucking nightmare. And I begged my ops director to go back to paper checks, but he never would. I'm a paper check guy.
There's a 9-figure business around the screen, and you want to ban it. You just made another group very upset. But with that, Scott, I want to say thanks for being here today. We appreciate the gift of your time and sharing so freely of your experience, and helps us to understand better what it means to be disruptive, not just in their personal life, but also in their career, their business, and their community. So with that, one last word of wisdom for anybody just listening into the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show.
Do what you can to stand out from the crowd, because attention is what's going to get you seen.
I love that. So with that, I want to say thank you to our listeners. If you haven't done so, make sure you check out the disruptivechef.club, become part of our private community. You want to have a front row seat of all the amazing things we do. With that, I want to say thanks for listening in today. Thanks for having me. Until next time, remember to disrupt your kitchen, fire up your career, stay hungry for change. I'm Christian, your Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur host. I'm signing off. Let's be the change, be the challenge, and be the chef who sets the world on fire. With that, have a great rest of your week and stay disruptive, everybody.